Hey guys, welcome back to another Q&A. It has been a while since I've done one, and you guys were asking for some longer videos, because it's been a while since I've done a long video actually, so here you go. Should Black Panther be in the game if he had the chance? So for people not aware, this is in reference to a tweet that Ed Boon made. He was pretty much joking around, but he was talking about the possibility of Black Panther showing up in the game, and basically the question here is, even if he could show up in the game despite being a Marvel character, should he? And I think so, yeah. If they were just able to add the character, then absolutely. The character's incredibly popular right now. He's a very interesting character, and he's pretty unique compared to most of the characters on the roster right now. He could even have a Wildcat premiere skin or something like that. I love the idea, and I think it would be awesome. Sadly, though, this one is very difficult for them to do, and I would imagine is never going to happen, at least in an Injustice game. Would you want a Marvel version of Injustice? They could use the Civil War storyline to make it happen. It's not just about picking a storyline, right? They would have to figure out how to go about doing that. If they were to do something like this, I don't think it would be NetherRealm directly developing that. Some people point out that, well, it could be possible for Marvel to do an Injustice-style game even under the banner of NetherRealm because, I mean, it wouldn't be the first time that the two companies have worked together. Warner Brothers, the people who make DC games, currently make Marvel Lego games. So they're willing to make Marvel Lego stuff, but that is with a very specific deal that Marvel has signed with Lego that has nothing to do with Marvel, right? So there are some liberties there which have to be given. I wouldn't use that as a case example of, say, Marvel being able to work with DC. That's more or less Marvel working with Lego, who also happens to work with DC, and Warner Brothers happens to work with Lego, so that's how that all kind of mashes up. Where for a Marvel-style Injustice game, Marvel would need to directly work with NetherRealm or Warner Brothers. This is something that I don't think will happen anytime soon, but would be a really awesome thing to do, because I love the Injustice gameplay style. I think Marvel vs. Capcom should probably maybe even just stop the whole franchise and maybe just do a Marvel fighting game and let Capcom produce Street Fighter and their other properties. And even if they want to do more stuff with specifically the Capcom characters, maybe they can make another game for that. I just don't think Marvel vs. Capcom has a future, at least in my opinion. So I think this would be a fantastic direction to go, and I even think the story you chose was a fantastic story for this type of game. Maybe not directly Civil War, but a version of Civil War that would better suit the fighting game genre. Now that NetherRealm have the Nickelodeon rights, what Nickelodeon character or characters would you want to see in MK11? I don't think there's any Nickelodeon character I would really want to see in Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat's a very gritty game, a very gruesome game, so a lot of the characters you might initially lean towards with Nickelodeon probably don't fit too well into that world. That being said, in a future Injustice title, Nickelodeon could have some awesome characters show up in that. Unfortunately, we also don't know if a deal was cut directly with Nickelodeon. We don't know if a deal was cut with the comic book producers of TMNT. I don't even know if they would even technically still own the rights to be able to do that. I am completely unaware of what the deal was behind the scenes because they haven't talked about it publicly, at least as far as I'm aware. I would really like to see some more Nickelodeon characters show up because there are some really cool ones they could use. A character like Korra from The Legend of Korra would be really cool. I actually haven't seen all of Korra. I think I've saw like the first season or something, but just the idea of a character like that translating from what it is currently, which is effectively an anime or a cartoon, into this 3D world, I think could be done fairly seamlessly just based on the moveset that she has. For people who don't know, she can control all of the elements in different ways, so that allows her to do some pretty interesting things that I think could make an amazing moveset in a game like Injustice. I know in the past I've said things like anime characters don't really translate into this kind of like 3D realistic setting, but a character like Korra I think does. Obviously it's going to come down to a case-by-case for anime characters when we talk about stuff like this. For example, I don't think like a character like Goku or Naruto or somebody like that would work in an Injustice game, but a character like Korra I think could totally do it. If you could play one genre for the rest of your life, what would you play? I'm gonna be honest, this is a very difficult question for me to answer because if it wasn't for my YouTube channel, I probably wouldn't play fighting games anywhere near as much as I currently do. My favorite genre, if I could just pick a genre and I had to stick to it, would probably be shooters, FPS games to be more specific. I know I've done no shooter content at all on my channel, but I have a big history with Counter-Strike. I love Counter-Strike. I think it's a really fun game. I've actually recently started playing Rainbow Six Siege. A friend of mine introduced me to that game and I'm having a ton of fun with it. For my personal time, it would absolutely be shooters, I think, because that's just the games that I have the most fun with. That being said, just based on the way that my YouTube channel works, I would have to say fighting games just for financial reasons. But yes, if it was purely up to me for like personal reasons, I would play FPS games. Do you think that NetherRealm will keep adding gear to Injustice 2? This is actually a super cool question. I think so. sort of. So I don't think we're going to get multiple gear updates. I think what they'll do is pretty soon probably add a big amount of gear to the game, like a massive amount. We're waiting for that Green Arrow hood, we're waiting for a bunch of other stuff that could happen. We've seen gear in trailers that haven't shown up in the actual game. So what I do think is going to happen is before the big release of like the Ultimate Edition, whatever it's going to be called, the MKXL equivalent of this game, whenever that comes out, I think we're going to see a massive gear update to the game, adding all of those things like the Green Arrow hood and probably a bunch of other gear pieces, and that will kind of be like the big last patch of the game. It will be a ton of extra stuff for us to go get, and that will be awesome. Obviously, something like this is probably never going to happen, but what do you think about a character like Rick Sanchez showing up in MK11? I am thoroughly against this for the same reasons I'm thoroughly against Goku and Naruto and characters like that ever showing up in a game like Injustice or Mortal Kombat. Those characters are specifically drawn to those worlds because of the artistic style that they have. I think Rick Sanchez is no exception to this. Also, he's just not really a character that fights in the same way that any of these characters do. And honestly, I probably wouldn't have answered this question, but believe it or not, it has actually been asked to me multiple times by multiple different people, so I figured I'd get that question out of the way. Do you really think this is the end of Injustice 2 content, or do you think in the future more characters would get premiere skins and extra content of some sort? I said earlier on in this video, I do think there's going to be some type of big gear patch where we get a bunch of new gear pieces to the game, and probably a balance patch will come along with that, and maybe even a premiere skin. But apart from that, no, I think we're pretty much done at this point. That being said, the game's still plenty of fun, so don't quit on it just yet. Would you like to see a Suicide Squad multiverse where you can unlock gear for Enchantress, Deadshot, Harley Quinn, Joker, and Batman? Well, of course I would love to see this. I like all of those characters, and I like all of those characters in said movie, and I even like that movie despite a lot of people not liking it. I think it was a fine movie. I would love to see Suicide Squad Harley Quinn. I think Margot Robbie, I'm not being biased, she is an Australian, so I'm fully aware that I could be biased here, but I'm pretty sure I'm not being biased when I say this. I think Margot Robbie is the perfect actress to play Harley Quinn. I think she does an amazing job, and I don't think they could have found anybody better, and I would love to see a version of her in the game. It's a bit disappointing we didn't get any CW stuff, any movie stuff. Well, I mean, we technically got movie stuff with the gear system, but I would have really have liked to have seen like 3D renders of Jason Momoa, Margot Robbie, and all those other characters, just like we have in the mobile version of the game. Do you think Injustice 3 will have Constantine? I am going to reserve my answer for a future video that I'm going to do, which is going to be about characters I believe that will absolutely show up in Injustice 3, and characters who I don't think will quite make the cut. Do you think a Star Wars fighting game would be cool, or no? Well, obviously it would be cool. Star Wars is pretty awesome. I wouldn't consider myself a Star Wars fan because I don't know much about the world. Even though I've seen all the films, it's not something I would consider myself super passionate about, but obviously something like a Star Wars fighting game would be freaking awesome. And I would want to main Darth Maul for sure, just because of the way his lightsaber works. Actually, taking that back, there's a robot dude in one of the prequels. Even though I don't like the prequels, that guy would be fun to play in a fighting game. What's the robot dude? After literally Googling the phrase robot dude Star Wars prequel, I have determined that his name was General Grievous. Since we got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, do you think we could get Krang as a premiere skin for Brainiac? I certainly think that would work. Functionally, the idea there works because of the way that Krang works, but I don't think we will end up getting that just because of the limited amount of time left they have to add that to the game before they start talking about MK11. You got to remember, E3 is right around the corner. We're almost definitely going to hear about MK11 there, so I'm absolutely not expecting that to happen, but it could totally absolutely work. Do you think NRS will do premiere skins for guest characters like Shredder for Sub-Zero as an example? I don't think this example will happen, but I do think it's possible that the next premiere skin, if there's going to be a next premiere skin, would be for a DLC character. I don't see why not. But the problem is a lot of the guest characters are very specific to them themselves, right? Raiden is very specific to himself, and he was lucky enough to get a Black Lightning skin, but I would say that a character like Sub-Zero is even more specific to himself. And then look at Hellboy. No one really fits him for a premiere skin because obviously you have to have the gauntlet make sense, or not the gauntlet, but the Fist of Doom or whatever. And then with TMNT, you have to have all of the weapons make sense, and all of the things they do with their shell make sense. At the end of the day, I don't think a premiere skin is a good idea for these guest characters, but it's totally possible. Also, I don't think you want to use characters like Shredder, and I believe earlier on in this video we talked about Krang, because I think you would want to save them, assuming that you've worked out a deal with TMNT. I would think you would want to save them for a future game, because you don't want to use all of that IP, all of that property, all of those TMNT characters in one game. You would rather spread them out the same way that we've seen them spread out Mortal Kombat characters, right? We didn't get Scorpion, Sub-Zero, and Raiden all in Injustice 1. We got Scorpion in Injustice 1, we got Sub-Zero and Raiden in Injustice 2. I'm hoping that we get Johnny Cage in Injustice 3, and I'm sure we'll get a couple more. What would your dream DC or Marvel film be? Well, for DC, it's already happening. The Flashpoint movie is not, I don't know if it's in production, but it's happening. It's a thing that they've confirmed. The Flash solo film will in fact be a Flashpoint movie. Oh my god, I'm so happy. As far as Marvel is concerned, I don't know a ton about Marvel, but I would really like to see a big X-Men story with the Avengers. So I don't know if this has ever happened in the comics. I would imagine just by virtue of the comics existing for a long time, I would like to see some of the X-Men go up against the Avengers for some reason that they can make up in a story. I would love to see that happen just because I personally believe some of the coolest characters from the entire Marvel roster come from the X-Men side. Well, that and Spider-Man being the best Marvel character, hands down, bar none. So perhaps maybe for my inner child, I would love to see Spider-Man fight on the X-Men team. But for the sake of this example, that's what I would love to see. Straight up X-Men versus Avengers. Who is your least favorite character to play in Injustice 2, and why? My answer is probably Wonder Woman, and the main reason why is just because I don't play her enough, so she seems very strange to me. One of the big ways she gets combos is off of a random string into a back three, and that string is just... the timing on the back three is just so tight, and I find it really, really difficult to use, so that's the reason I don't like playing Wonder Woman. If Vibe was added to Injustice 2, would you like the comic book version of Vibe or the CW Cisco? I'm actually not sure which one I would go for. I don't know a lot about Vibe's personality in the comic books. I know it's significantly different from the CW version, but what I really like about Vibe is his powers. The CW Cisco character is really cool, and I think he's funny on occasion, and I like the powers that he's got so far, but what really intrigues me is comic book Vibe's powers. So assuming that they're going to be at the same power level, and they're going to be able to do the same things regardless of which one I choose, I would like to have Cisco in the game, I think. Maybe? I don't know. But if CW Cisco is at the level that he is now, instead of like the comic book level he is, then I would pick comic book Vibe. Because the whole draw for Vibe for me is the amount of awesome things he can do. And I feel like that would be ruined a little bit if I pick CW Cisco. That's going to be the end of this particular Q&A. This one was very long according to my recording time. I don't know what it's going to look like once it's all been edited and processed and all that good stuff, but it looks like it was a long one, and that's what you guys wanted. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you'd like to support me, leaving a like on the video and a comment down below is always super appreciated. Subscribe to keep up to date with future content, and if you want to be an extra tier of supporter, you can come check out my Patreon, which is always linked in the description. Again, thank you so much for watching. My name is Bilbsy, and I will see you in tomorrow's video.